So I wanted to interview you because I wanted to get to the passion of what starts people on the journey to
Mhm.
fascia.
Mhm.
Why the calling? Why the attraction? And so, what I was going to first ask, how would you describe fascia? Not what is it, but in the way you feel about it, the way you have studied it for so long. What is fascia to you?
It's a mystery still. Sneaked into my life 30, 40 years ago when I studied rolfing, and I found it intriguing.
Mm,
But there were other interesting topics in life as well.
yeah.
And then I started to get more and more my nose into it and my curiosity. And I think that is a nice approach. So if you want to understand fascia,
You're curious.
then to approach it with a sense of curiosity.
That's a beautiful way of saying
That works very well. And then fascia, I think she's a female goddess. She will show you one step at a time.
of the next step.
Very
And
nice surprises.
have you found that you can see parallels between the fascia in the science and fascia in the kind of the expansion of consciousness or in the spiritual
Oh,
realm? Do you
sure,
see
yeah,
the
but that's different categories anyway.
really?
So I come from the therapist and from the esoteric field, and I've now moved more into the science field, and I
Yeah.
feel like Alice in Wonderland. So you know how your people think,
Yeah.
and then you study these strange creatures who only believe things if they have been studied,
Yes.
etc.
Yes.
And direct observation doesn't count. And they have
Interesting.
very
Yeah.
strange rituals
Yes.
that you then learn. And some of the rituals they actually make sense.
Okay.
Yeah,
Give us an
but
example of that.
that you distinguish whether something is an assumption or
Hmm.
whether it's an observation. Yeah, for
Interesting.
example, in
Yeah.
an explanatory mechanism, you observe something and you say it must be because factor A is the cause of factor B.
The-
You want to explain the world.
I see. And so, are you saying that that protects against being able to make things up and keeping
Yeah,
things
so the
more?
scientists are more careful
I see.
whether they
Yeah.
say it's associated with
I see.
or whether it's causing.
Oh, that
And
is a good
yeah,
distinction.
yeah, and a therapist doesn't make that. So
That's
there are
true.
certain words
That
is
they
associated with, and you know, oh, he did at least 5 days of science studies because a clinician doesn't say that. Yeah, it's
interesting.
associated.
And I
You
think it's
say they
important.
tend to go together, but I don't know about the relation,
That's so
whether it's chicken
interesting.
or egg, or whether one is preceding the other.
That's so interesting.
So there are some advantages to the way how
I
scientists
see that.
work.
I see
Yeah,
that. Do
yeah.
you feel like you have learned that, but you still ain't like kind of angle like personality wise towards
I change camps very
yeah,
frequently.
depending on who you're talking to.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. A different
And
language.
so at least half my brain is now a scientist, and
Yeah.
the other brain just says I know it. You know.
What part do you think you know, like that you can own that you know, versus what you presuppose? It's a really good lesson for people, I think, because it
Mhm.
keeps the openness, right? That's what keeps us opening to
Yeah,
looking more. If you
yeah,
assume you know everything,
yeah.
then it takes off the curiosity you were talking about.
It's just beautiful dancing this morning, for example.
Yeah.
Then, from a scientific perspective, it's meaningless. But for me, it was very profound. You know that. So if the moment is right, if the movement is right, if there is a sense of connectedness between the people,
I see.
then there is magic.
That is,
So that is totally non-scientific statement,
yeah.
but I felt it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it doesn't
Yeah.
make it less real.
Yeah.
I think a lot
Yeah.
of my journey, I was trying to get the science and it took out the soul
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
the pursuit, which is what I
Yeah.
really love about fascia. For me, it was the connective journey to
Mhm.
self.
Yeah.
And it is this exploration of
Yeah.
like, both of those halves, because we are not just head. We're not
Yeah.
just in the science
Yeah.
of it. We're not in the intellect,
Yeah.
but in that really deep seat of kind of sanctuary. And that's where the dancing is. And that's nice to
Yeah.
hear you say that
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
and that probably brings a lot of why you're so good at the science is because you hold a space for and an appreciation for that aspect of being a somatic therapist for so many
Yeah.
years.
I was lucky because I got mentored or I got supported or motivated
Yeah.
by two close friends, and
Huh.
they were ahead in the science game.
I
And when
see.
I was romancing or dating with, with becoming a scientist, or making that the topic of my life, I
Yeah.
interviewed them and got their advice. And both of them said, you check your most treasured assumptions why you are doing science. Things that you don't question,
Huh.
and start to question them too.
Interesting.
And then you become a good scientist. But
Interesting.
most scientists question everything except 3 or 4 things that they strongly believe. So then nothing is safe anymore. Which is, and even the thing that people associate your name, you have proven fascia can contract or whatever it is. That you question that. So it becomes a Buddhistic quality about being empty and not being full.
Oh,
And,
interesting. Say more about that.
This meditation, you become empty.
Yes.
You're not full of yourself. You're occupied by everything.
Yes.
So you become humble. And
I feel like that's the end of the spiritual journey, right? Or not the end. We never end. But
I mean, in the spiritual path that I've been involved in, that usually is described and it's practiced. But then often you see the opposite, where people are full of themselves, and they can explain everything with their 4 elements, and they say nothing new under the moon. I've written that 20 years ago. The world is not listening, but I explain cancer. It's always a violation against the 3 principles of law. And there are a few things that need to be discovered still, but basically we know it all. Cancer and all the problems come from violation of the golden principles.
That's so interesting. It's so interesting.
And then you are satisfied with yourself. It works, And this is not what the spiritual teachers teach, but that's what you sometimes find.
Totally. Totally.
And when I then met the scientists, they said, we don't know anything, Robert.
Isn't that interesting how spirituality assures so much? Like most religions are like, yes, this is this. And the scientists are the curious.
And especially the therapists, at least in Germany, they are self-educated preachers. The psychologists, they know how to listen and when to talk and how many advice you give to your client per hour. You never give 5 advice per hour, But if you go to a manual therapist, they start, without you asking them for advice, they give you advice. How to sleep, how to deal with emotions.
That's right.
And you didn't ask them for it.
No.
So you came to fix your elbow, and they give you advice like as if you have asked them.
That is so interesting.
To give advice. So that is some of the negative. And you shouldn't judge a field by the negative things, because you can do the same thing with science. But that explains why I, from having felt the not so good or where people are full of themselves. And they are no longer curious. And then when I entered science from a lucky angle, I'm not saying all scientists are that.
Okay.
But
because you had the friends that kind of guided you. But the
scientists that I know, even at the age of 70, they are like a child that is discovering.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting.
And they are saying, Robert, it could be all wrong what we have been doing for 50 years. Isn't that great?
That's so freeing.
And I love that quality.
That's so freeing. Right? I feel like humans, and I come from those disciplines, like you raised in these like very kind of like modular, traditions of somatic, like I do this and I do this, and everybody, it's a pecking order, and no one really is open to, so then you get stuck in this, I got to prove, or I'm not enough. And then you start like, once you do know something, you protect it with everything you know, and then you got and then your value and your identity becomes in it, and then it squashes the spirit.
And status and the whole thing.
That's right. That's right. Rather than just being curious.
But the real scientists, in my evaluation, they are like children. Yeah,
I love that.
and they are discoverers, and we meet
Yes.
and exchange, and we, of course, you need to learn how to debate, but your best friends question
Mm,
the most fundamental things. Yeah,
that's
and
amazing. That's
yeah,
amazing. Do you have
yeah,
mentors that you still work
yeah,
with that are,
yeah,
and they
yeah.
keep you
But
excited?
some of them keep dying. That's not so
Really?
good. Yeah,
Yeah, that is sad, right? You
yeah.
start getting to the age
And
where
then you have the young people for whom you are a godfather,
that's right.
and that doesn't work.
That is true.
Yeah,
That is true. You kind of miss that, but then
yeah.
you become that, right? Two people.
Yeah, but in Germany, I'm now the godfather of Robbie. So that has some nice advantages.
Yes. Does it feel like it comes with a lot of
But
responsibilities?
I need to actively reach out and meet with friends,
Yes. Yes.
and with people who dare to question me.
This
Yeah,
feels right
yeah,
to me. And
yeah,
this is what I was, John Sharkey was really instrumental in just listening to him, is that he's a disruptor
yeah,
and he's not important. Disruption is really good, but I think that also just being willing to have the courage to have someone
yeah,
rub up
yeah,
against you,
yeah.
and that
And
has
he has
terrified
that
me as a
spirit,
culture. Yeah, as a
to
culture.
draw fire and then
But
see
most
how.
people are also
Yeah,
wounded by that, right?
yeah,
You are a person who actively seeks out
yeah,
agitation
yeah.
because you want to know more.
But we need to learn how to do that.
That's right.
How you question and still show appreciation.
Right. That separation.
Yeah,
What is your
yeah.
key for that? Like, how do you feel like engagement I mean, you want someone to
Yeah.
say, well, show me how this works, or try this, or
Yeah.
have you seen this, or
Well, there are some political things you learn. First, you
see.
appreciate them, and you study what their values are,
okay.
and
Okay.
and then you do the sandwich method.
Oh, what's that one?
Yeah. So you start with praise, and then you come in with your difficult questions, and then
see.
you end up with appreciation.
I see. That's the Sarah method. Yes.
Yeah.
Show appreciation, give them the hard knock, and then pull it in.
So people do it with me too. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you like?
But it works. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
good way to be able to
Yeah.
keep. The most important thing is relationship, right?
Yeah, and also if I get too agitated, I try to step back,
I
and
see.
testosterone is a good thing, but it's in science can be.
Really? Do you see a lot of it with the men?
Yeah,
Is that what you're
I
saying?
can see it in me. Yeah,
Oh, really?
it's a yes but thing. Yeah, yes but here, yeah,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
You know what's so
so-
funny? My mom complains about that, and my dad, who was a professor,
yeah.
and he has that yes, but. It's almost like you have to show the opposite
But that's
side.
what
or the,
testosterone does.
Does
So we smell if something is a perceived threat to our hierarchy in whatever our orientation of hierarchies is.
I see.
And that's a masculine thing.
It's yes.
And then you try to defend.
Well, and what's interesting is I think that translated into my personal life, like from my dad. So women can probably do it. But
Yeah,
some of my realization of just my own spiritual journey with fascia was like, how can I unbind? How can I
Yeah.
get unrigid? How
Yeah.
can I like give and flex? Like one of the
Yeah.
spiritual principles I think of fascia is yield. Like, what is
Yeah.
it like to yield
yeah,
and be receptive and be
Yeah.
adaptive? And all
Yeah.
of these principles are actually high callings of the
Yeah.
person to be able
Yeah.
to do that. So
Yeah.
what's your key to staying agile and open as a human? And as a scientist, you said creativity
Yeah.
and questioning things.
yeah.
How do you stay agile and open and fascia light?
So I try to explore new things for myself.
Okay.
Whether it's a new dancing class or,
Yeah.
or any other athletic sport or meditation or something like that. So that certainly helps.
Yes.
And
I think
then like here to enter a topic once a while that you don't know much about it
yeah.
and see what you can learn from it. So
And
that
not be able to
helps,
have an opinion about everything.
Yeah.
It just,
Yeah.
I learned that one at this conference. I'm like,
yeah,
I signed up to be the researcher.
yeah,
It comes back to what you were talking about earlier, but like,
Yeah.
and they were asking me all these questions. I'm like, I don't know that I have an answer. I don't know. And
Yeah.
this guy's like, you don't need to have an answer. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
So
So-
just like Werner Klinger who said, I don't know if it's an answer.
right, is a fair answer.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and I love that
Mhm.
there's leadership. So I think a lot of people lead on you for leadership,
Yeah.
not just what you've done, but like the basis of tell us more, show us how to be, show us
Okay,
how to
yeah.
process
Yeah.
this,
So,
right?
so I can do that easily.
Yeah.
So my preaching in almost every lecture is, if you want to understand fascia, you try to become in many qualities like a good fashion yourself.
Oh,
So you become a good network rather than a single competitor against your competitors.
oh, that's a great piece of
yeah.
advice.
So you're not a fragmented single piece. You're part of a network.
That is
And
very
then you
good.
become more. So you look at how many connections do I have? Can I become even more rich? Can I
connections.
manage the addresses, the emails I get?
Yeah.
So, but you try to not restrict your input,
That's right.
but to diversify your input.
We become stronger together.
Yeah.
When we our resilience is based upon the strength of our love connections.
I have some friends, and it works very well, where they say, I want to select who surrounds me. I want to be selective where I go, because I don't want to pollute myself with all the things out there.
Interesting.
So you become selective, that you only go to meetings that have a certain quality, where people listen to each other, where they have at least a basic political congruence.
That's right, congruency.
But I would argue, if you want to be a good fascia therapist or fascia researcher, you should try to some degree to do the opposite.
That's really, I think that's like goes beyond diversity. That's so wise. It's so wise.
So we talk about biodiversity. We talk about your microbiome is more healthy if it has more diversity. Not how the proposition is of the good bacteria to the negative. Yes, that even more important is the variety, including the negative.
That's right.
Yeah. So I think in fascia, you need to have veterinary friends.
Yes.
You need to have surgical friends.
That's incredible.
Yeah, you need to have Reiki friends.
Yeah.
And people who believe that there are we have telepathic communication with people living on outer stars. I have friends like that.
Yeah.
And I want to keep them as friends.
Right? Yeah. I feel like that is the way to live, because it keeps you, number one, curious, fed by diversity, right? And variety.
And they may have something to say that you
actually
may need.
Matters.
Yeah.
How have you stayed so open yourself?
I profit from it. It's a very nice state.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I figured out a long time ago, often you have one statement, one mission that you associate your personal identity with. So that Robert Schweitzer, or your my life is meaningful because. And I used to be a sannyasin, then it was my spiritual religion, that was number one. And that was if you get up in the morning, you have a task. You're not just there as a fly in the wind. Yeah. And that seems to be important in terms of giving your meaning. And going out in the rain and or whatever happens. And when I got more in the fascia field, first I was out there because I had this basic hypothesis from Professor Staubesand, and I devoted up to 10 years of research to prove whether he was right, that fascia can independently contract independently from the muscle. And that was Robert Schweizer's contribution to humanity.
And you did it.
And I did it. And that was, for me, I had a contract, even with the devil. I cannot die until I have finished that research. That was very important for me.
And what was the drive?
So many times, even I imagine a car accident could have happened. How would I react? I would get up and say, no, I need to finish the research.
What was the drive? Like, that's a pretty intense drive.
Yeah, so for me, I need to have goals. Yeah.
Okay.
But that was done. So that paper is published, and now everything else is a benefit. But now I'm 71 years old, so I need another purpose.
Let's try to find that for you.
Yeah, and for me, I think I made the right choice. The only thing that I'm here to prove, or not to prove, but where I say I was right, is something that is almost infallible. It is, fascia has more surprises waiting for us than most of us would have assumed. And then almost anything that happens, you can say, I was right.
See, that was...
So it is very hard to fail on that part.
That's a great broad categorization.
Because with any kind of other prediction, it could happen
But maybe not.
that in 5 years they say, Robert, no.
You were right to
You have-
keep it open
you
so
have
you can
less-
succeed no matter what. It's really,
Yeah,
really
yeah.
funny.
But it is a blessing if you're not there to make something narrow,
Yeah.
but to enjoy something else.
It is
Yeah.
so, it's a lighter way to live, right?
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
about like contraction is
Yeah.
compressive, is
Yeah.
weighted, is heavy,
Yeah.
like all of
Yeah.
those analogous things. So like
Yeah.
the more you spread, the more open you get, the lighter
Yeah.
in being you are is a
Yeah.
big one for me, is that I lifted my fascia in my chest and it made me a lighter person.
Oh, wow.
I was
Yeah.
able to like laugh again from 14 to like 25. I really didn't, I would laugh with people, but I didn't have like this heartfelt
Like you have
jovial thing
now.
like I have now,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And so there was this lightness of being that was restored, following those fascia principles, that
Nice.
the more
Yeah.
connections you have, I mean, they're even showing that the more friendships you have and stuff, the more it stabilizes your spirit,
Yeah.
the more of like a mental stability it provides you. And so all of those things, I think you live out as I
Yeah.
watch you. I love the
Yeah,
joy in your
so
eyes.
this
and
is
the-
a big playground for me.
It is so fun.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I am learning, yes, from your lectures, but more just from your presence as a human, of just like
Oh,
getting
nice.
the chance
Yeah.
to like see your joy
Yeah.
in your
Yeah,
eyes
yeah.
and talk about it and find the, like if I can emulate
but
one
this
thing.
is very nice,
It
Yeah,
is. It really is.
yeah. And often I think Tom Findlay, he would love to see what we have co-created. So we started it.
Yes.
And at the end of the 2007, he was really smart. He was much smarter than me. He was really a smart fox.
Oh my
And I miss him.
Do you?
Yeah.
How long were you guys working together?
15, 20 years. I
Oh,
think.
really?
Yeah.
Well, he was the scientist that kind of inspired you to go and study the fascia?
No, he was not one of the two that I mentioned there. No. I became a scientist, motivated by these other two guys. And then we met at a small workshop.
Oh, yeah.
Sue Hitzman was part of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and we crossed paths because he has been an MD, PhD scientist entering the complementary medicine field. They're doing a Rolfing training, but he didn't know much about Rolfing. and I had grown up in the Rolfing spiritual world, and I had tasted everything and entered the science field, and so we could complement each other perfectly.
What a beautiful friendship!
Yeah. And then I thought he would love to see what's happening.
Really, it would excite him.
And at the end of the 2000 conference, he said, I think we were in a car together, and I've been driving with him so often, etc. And he would come up, he would be quiet and falling asleep, and then he comes up with these very nice
funny things to say.
He said, Robert, do you know we cannot stop it anymore? Even if you and I, we would say, stop this fascia thing, the avalanche has started, so we better get it active.
Have it growing
so we cannot go back. Yeah.
Does that feel right?
Yeah, and he was correct, but now we see where
it's heading.
Yeah.
Is that exciting for you? Like, I love your chapter in your book that says the future belongs to fascia. I oftentimes will actually close some of my podcasts with that because I just think that there's so much that will administer to humanity from yes, the body, but all these other things that fascia has to teach us or has to experience. So what do you think? Where's the next place for fascia to go?
It looks like the medical establishment will claim that fascia belongs to them and you should give up.
I see. They're going to try to take it over.
Because they can now sell expensive equipment.
Oh.
They have objective data.
I see.
And they can make money. And they can do what they love to do, is to give a precise diagnosis with numbers and with images. And then based on the diagnosis, and the client is very impressed, fancy equipment, etc. Wow, high tech. Yeah. Then they say you need 3 sessions of fascia therapy. And then
they take out the mystery, don't they? I don't like to call it magic, but it's almost like part of the passion I hear in your voice for fascia is that this one thing has lasted you a lifetime of inquiry, a lifetime of joy. And that is only possible with the expansion, with the possibilities, with the stretching of rather than the contracting. And what you're describing is that the medical community wants to take it and contract it back down to a
In low back pain, they will
diagnosable.
do it. In low back pain, it's quite likely
I
that this
see.
becomes a standard treatment, and that will be good because then it's totally out of the woo association,
Okay.
and they may call it something else, but I think ultrasound and MRI and artificial intelligence
Will help.
will make that a standard component, similar like lumbar stenosis
Mm-hmm.
or disc prolapse. They will say it's not thoracolumbar fascia adhesiveness or irritation.
Interesting.
And that's good, because then you look for fascia, and then they will do hydrodissection or other. Or now there's a company I cooperated with them. They will inject hyalurona into the precise layer.
Really?
Yeah, and then compared with a placebo injection,
and see
you get rid of low back pain sooner.
Interesting.
Yeah, but then you can say hyaluronan is supposed to be created from the body, not from
That's
the
right.
outside. Maybe we could do a few stretches.
And get the same thing. And get the same
or
thing.
do more rolls on the floor, or squat on the ground, etc.
How do you keep the mystery in fascia? The more we know more, how do we keep the childlike?
You go to conferences like this,
Yeah, that's what does it.
And I also like reading. Reading, it becomes really like a treasure hunt. It's really nice to follow up how things open up. So for me, this is a delight. And I used to start my days for 30 years by looking at my clients. So you have these maps for each client, and you look at the pictures, and you make up your body response and your diagnosis, etc. And then you prepare for I used to have 8 to 10 clients a day.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So I was upset. So I did.
That is intense.
Yeah. But then I could afford to do research on the weekend.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was wondering.
But it worked for me. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
So I mean, you had an incredible fascia to do that.
Yeah. But it was also lots of experience.
I see. I see. So you knew where to give the effort.
And how to concentrate and not to answer the phone before, and really be concentrated on. But then I was wishing maybe it would be nice to start the day by reading a scientific literature that came up overnight. And now I have that right.
Really? Yeah, just being able to read.
So I would do my clients, and then Friday nights I have time for real pleasure hunt.
That's amazing.
So where you go in the literature. And now I have this, so that is one of the advantages of being considered to be the godfather of roughing, which I'm definitely not. But you have many people who send you material.
Oh, interesting.
And that is very nice. They say, this is interesting for you. I saw that. And often you have seen it already many times.
Yes.
But they say, oh, this is interesting. I would have not seen that,
Oh, wow.
And then you send them a thumb up or something like that. But I do the same. And that's a very kind of networking. You see something and say, I guess Werner doesn't know this. I send it to him, and Werner says, Robert, where did you get this stuff? That's exactly what I've been looking forward. And you don't do it because you're obliged. Yeah. But it gives you a sense of self. Wow, I found this and I turned it over to Werner. And he says, holy shit, I can use that in my coming lecture. I will apply for funding or whatever. Yeah.
That's really fun.
Yeah, so that is part of my life now, but also people do it with me.
Yeah. And so you like to receive the information from them because it helps to build your sense of.
The story that I'm starting to understand is that comes more and more from science. So our perception, how we perceive our body in terms of pain or energy level or of other people is based to a much bigger degree than I used to assume, and most people to assume, by what we predict based on past experiences, based on other things. So we create reality with our expectations. And so it's called predictive coding. and many.
Is that a neurological thing, or is that like a
It- it-
spiritual term?
No, it comes up in neurology over and
Interesting.
over. It came up
Predictive encoding.
predictive coding.
Coding.
Yeah, so whether you vomit after you have food or not depends to a minor degree on the concentration of bacteria that you have there.
No.
But you see other people vomiting. It reminds you, and you see the color of the food, and it and the smell you have.
No
And
way.
and then the whole party goes into vomiting, and there was nothing into it. Yeah.
I see.
And that happens with back pain, with many things. Yeah.
That's really interesting, and
so-
that totally leads people to basically.
And that's a basic feature. Our brain is not there to be a photograph, but to make plausible predictions based on missing information. So you see captions of a letter, and you say that's a letter A. So you miss in the filling gaps, and often they are correct, but often they are very incorrect.
That's an interesting.
So we now have all these rubber arm experiments where so you have a plastic arm here and the real arm is there, and then they come with a ruler and they touch the rubber arm here, but they also touch your real arm, which is here, at the same time, and you see it, and then you think this is your arm after
even
a
if
while.
it's plastic.
Yeah, even if it's plastic. And then they come with a fork and it hurts.
Even though it's not yours.
Yeah, it's not yours. Yeah. So, but that makes total sense.
Totally.
Your brain needs to predict what is happening. Yeah, and
That's
it has
so
missing
fascinating.
information. Yeah.
And that could be works in our favor on so many levels.
So a lot of people, and that doesn't come from experience. Of course, it's backed by experience, but it becomes from scientific experiments more and more.
That's so
So
interesting.
how we perceive the world, how we perceive our body, is by making up a story and then twisting the data at least
fit that story.
So where you didn't have the time to collect everything, to make it fit to your, even if that means you are in pain, but at least your story is correct. And so the story we create is so important.
It's so important. And it also explains why sometimes people can't get out of their stuff because they're not even living in the actual reality.
So you make a story, I was a hero, everything was life, until that time when they did the wrong surgery, or my boss, they should have listened to me. And that's your story. And if you don't change that story, you can do the best fascia therapy in the world.
That's right.
Your brain will say, this is the twist of your life. And
that is so interesting. I mean, that explains a lot, even why people just kind of stop growing. Right? Stop being.
And I can see it in me and everybody. We need to choose the stories so that we tell ourselves about our role in life.
That is so powerful. That is so powerful. How do you suggest that people would be able to do that? I mean, I think that's a very important tool to be able to.
As a healer, you do what you come up with another very appealing story, but you don't say this is a story. It comes between the lines, and that's what powerful stories do.
Interesting.
Because if you say it's a story, people can say, I can buy it or not. But if you just don't tell the story, but you act according to the story. And the story is, you have been fallen out of paradise, and now you are in pain, or you have problems because you violated some principles of some of nature. You have been doing too much ego, or you have been not living in the 4 elements, or yin and yang have not been balanced. And now your system tells you that you are out of the path, so you explain what happens. And then you say, I'm the priestess of the 4 elements, and with my help, you can go back to be in harmony with the golden laws of nature. And I will orient you. Fascia, you have everything in your body, but you need to acknowledge that it takes time or whatever. So you create, and now together we write your recovery back to the paradise. Where you were as a child, everything was happy, you remember. You have fallen out of paradise, but you are at the right therapist now. I have been there where you are. I help you back into paradise. This with everything that you already have in your body. So that's the story.
Yeah.
Every Rolfer tells it.
Yeah.
So you
And that's
don't
kind of
make
in
it
the
outspoken. But if the client buys that, and it's very attractive.
It is. I mean, I think
That-
that's people's
yeah.
hunger.
Yeah.
Their soul hunger is to
Yeah.
rewrite
And
their
they look at
stories.
you and and if the therapist for them is not a jerk,
Mm-hmm.
and is not shortly about to kill themselves, but who is in tune and they have
Yeah,
a meaningful
connected.
life, then you are willing also to follow the path
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
towards self-ownership, being a positive
It's really
relationship.
empowering, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's.
yeah,
I mean, that's
yeah.
life changing.
So this is a story that is a very potent story and a good one.
Mm-hmm.
And the medical people are not doing that so much.
No,
Yeah.
no, they don't. I mean,
Yeah.
that's another aspect of whole person
Yeah.
work,
Yeah.
right? Where it's you're working with the clay, but you're
Yeah.
actually working in the soul.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I've written a book and trying to get it published, but it's called Skin to Soul,
Oh, nice.
and it's
Yeah.
kind of this journey of fascia's basic biological
Yeah.
and but the spread of this
Yeah.
changing the story, the way the tensions are woven, the way
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
feel your life and
Yeah.
see your life, and that's kind of the gift of the. Do you miss working with other, ever with the population with your hands and stuff? Are you still doing that?
I do. So
Yeah.
when I work with it, I know this is the thing I've been doing for the majority of my life.
Yeah.
I started with 23 as the first
No.
German Rolfer. Yeah. And
Really?
then I had a waiting list practice already very early on.
No way.
So working with my hands one-on-one, I can do science as long as I want. I've never been married with a woman longer than I've been a Rolfer. So this
Isn't
has
that-
been a steady thing
Yeah,
for my life. You
so
open the door, you make the client welcome.
That is
You know,
so beautiful.
Yeah.
And you miss
and
that?
You find, I miss it. I'm at
Yeah.
home with it.
Yeah, it's a different way of being in.
And also to
relationship.
work with your hands and feel it out is
Yeah.
very, very nice. And the quietness. So we are not doing this in Rolfing. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
so-
right.
so
Why
for
did
me-
you choose Rolfing? Just out of curiosity.
Because it touched me very deeply.
I see.
But I also I was into polarity before. I met Pierre Panetier. He was very charismatic, and then I got a little bit into Chinese medicine.
Okay.
But it was very confusing for me. Should I believe the Chinese acupuncture points
I see.
or the Indian ones? And they said,
Ah.
you decide. You don't mix them. You know, but
Interesting.
and then you say, well, then I do it. Whose humor I like more from the therapist, you know,
Yeah.
or the shirt or whatever.
So it's arbitrary, like
yeah.
assignment.
And that
of,
was not very confusing for me, but it was clear you should study one system at least for 5 years in
Oh,
order to become
interesting.
a good
a good
therapist.
ah,
And that was I was not clear whether I go into Indian or into
oh, interesting.
Chinese, and then I got a Rolfing session. I did not understand what I understood today, but it was very profound. He was a very quiet man, didn't talk much, but I felt a direct connection there. He was really there. And he
Oh,
touched
wow.
me strongly, firmly,
Yeah.
and I had some
Confidently.
tears coming down.
Ah.
I had profound changes in my kyphotic posture.
Huh.
But like many of my clients, not all of the clients, you walk different on the streets,
Mhm.
and you have different. Your heart is more open.
That's right. You feel
Yeah,
like a different.
and you feel different, not only physically but
That's
also
right. Your spirit.
on other levels. So then I decided to stay in that town and get the whole 10 Rolfing session. Later, I figured out it was a missing father in my childhood, that he sometimes gave me a strong massage, but I had been longing to have contact with him. So that was part why I felt like this is such a profound work.
Yeah, meeting a
Yeah.
complete empty
Yeah.
need, a void
Yeah.
that was in need of filling.
And then also, I just attended a couple of months ago a conference from psychologists and neuroscientists on social affective touch. And they showed us if you have mice and you come with a tender feather and you stroke them, normally they run away from it. But if you isolate them, that they don't have social touch with other animals, for 4 days, they will love your feather. That
No
you come.
way.
And and if you give it to them, they will sleep better, and their wound healing is better. But if they had enough social contact before, your feather doesn't care. Yeah.
That's so interesting.
So when they do now studies
Uh-huh.
on social touch, which
Yeah.
is very interesting,
So interesting.
with speed and what relationship, etc.
Well, and it shows that literally there's I keep using this word, but like a metabolism of it. If you
Yeah.
don't have it for 4 days, there becomes a
Yeah.
need.
Yeah.
And that means that there's a filling that
Yeah,
needs
yeah,
to
yeah,
happen.
yeah.
So you get the
So
filling.
there must
and
be a subconscious hunger.
That's right.
Yeah.
A subconscious
Yeah.
hunger.
So
for
when I
that.
was at that time, I had been traveling. I had been in a ashram before, where you have constant
Yeah.
interaction. But at that time, when I got my first walking session, I was a stranger in a strange city, you know,
Interesting.
and at least for a week. So I was in the ideal biochemistry.
To receive that.
Yeah. So like one of the mice, where you come with a feather and go, oh.
Life's like,
Yeah, yeah.
I'll let you rub me. I'll let you rub me.
Yeah,
You just wanna- I have that feeling. I mean, I've
Yeah.
had sometimes feelings where like someone touches me and I just
Sure.
break down because
Yeah.
it's such a release
Oh,
of
it can
like
be so profound.
right,
Yeah.
so profound.
Yeah.
Of just thank
Yeah.
you. It's
Yeah.
yours
Yeah.
also a way of touch is a way of saying I see you.
Yeah.
I see that people just want to be seen.
You
you wanna
have
be-
warmth, you have everything.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, to be seen.
So I've
and
been now
noticed.
tinkering with it.
Tell me.
I have a Thai massage around the
Oh,
corner,
yes.
and normally I go there once a month or
Uh-huh.
something like that. And now, usually I have enough social contact,
Yes.
but they are like on the weekend sometimes, I don't have any physical contact. And then I book the massage on Monday or Tuesday afterwards, because then the massage is wonderful.
That's
I
right.
had it that I lie on the table and I'm daydreaming. She's touching me, but who is not paying attention? Robert. You know, I could just give her the money back or whatever.
That's right.
And this is almost predictable.
Right.
If you're not hungry for it,
That's right.
you must force your mind to pay attention.
Attention.
Otherwise, my mind continues to write stories.
That's so interesting.
And I should answer that email.
I'm
etc.
gonna.
Oh
Yeah.
shit, what's she doing there? It would be interesting to pay attention, but I can't.
You know, it's so funny. My background was more like I do sometimes get distracted, but
Mm.
people wouldn't touch me in the places that I had the most pain,
Yeah,
and they
please
couldn't
go
find
there.
it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And so what I'd end up doing, and this is how I mapped out a lot of the connective things for myself, was they would push on me, and I couldn't tell them move to the left to the right, so I would like slip my
There we
back-
go.
back-
Yeah,
I would-
yeah, yeah.
so I started doing
Yeah,
these
but
movements.
that's nice
with
if you can
them
do that. I have
and I
my
found that it
clients do
enhanced-
that on
yes,
purpose.
because that
Show me, move me. If
enhances
there's spontaneous movement, allow it to happen.
to
and
do
they
it
teach
and
us something.
find it,
Yeah,
because I think it makes our treatments more potent.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
then all of a sudden I'm in communion.
yeah,
When I ask them to move with me,
yeah,
then it's a dance. It's
Yeah.
like I'm actually tapping into their grid and they're
Yeah.
with mine.
and
you
they
know,
show
we
you
weave
and their body.
together.
Yeah, so that's
right?
that's the style.
It's
I
a
like.
really
Yeah,
beautiful communion of
Yeah.
connection that
Yeah.
refers to
Yeah.
that staying present within
Yeah.
it.
So,
It's beautiful.
if stories are so important, so what the story that we have here
Yeah.
is actually a beautiful one, but
Yes.
it's good to know what the story is.
Tell me what you think the
And,
story
and
is.
it's not we are conquering the world
Mhm.
like we used to have as sannyasins or the early Christians, you know, that we start the new era in humanity
That's
or
right.
the 1,000-year Reich or whatever, you know. So, yeah. And we
Well,
are
what is
right
it?
and our parents have
Yeah,
been
it's
wrong.
not.
So that is not the story. The story is, and it's not a stupid story, that the Cinderella story, that there is an organ that is omnipresent, it's everywhere, but
Mm.
people take it as if it's a useless wrapping.
Mm.
And so it is as relatively unimportant as the wrapping around the gift that you give to a
Yeah.
friend. So you pay attention, you put it aside, but the real thing
Is
is
in there.
inside, and you can understand the real thing without the wrapping. And that is a very Western approach.
That is.
And the wrapping is a big function of the fascia.
Mm.
And now, and Western medicine, of course, focuses on fragmented pieces.
Mhm.
And there is some Eastern schools who look more at the relationship and figure and background, but that is the strength or weakness of Western scientific thinking,
yeah.
that we
Very
that we
linear.
put something into 78 pieces,
Mhm.
give it names, and then put it back together in the right relationship. And so to look at the human body like a Swiss watch.
Yeah, that's right, like a Swiss Army knife. Yeah.
And we know that has disadvantages when you look at a living organism. And fascia is the material that most of the Western people neglected because
Yes.
it's almost everywhere and it's the most connecting tissue. It is almost everywhere.
Mhm.
And they take it as if it doesn't have a special. And then the story is that this most useless tissue may be the princess. Yeah. And it may have not all of the answers, but many of the answers.
So many.
Yeah.
And maybe some of the gift is that it has more questions than answers, which means that the Western mind has
and
to.
it's not as shiny as the heart or the brain, it's a Cinderella. Oh, that's just fascia. You have that.
That's
the glue
great.
that puts out together. So it is a nice Cinderella story.
That is a great Cinderella story, and it's hopeful.
Yeah, and I always like to have been on the underdog side. If the underdog at the end of the story wins, Robert
that speaks so much to your heart.
But the underdog is actually a network, and that makes it an even richer story.
Even richer.
Yeah. So from all the tissues, it's the most connecting tissue.
It is.
And it seems to be involved with the immune system and with emotions and with many fields. If you use fascia as a road for asking questions, you have a high chance of coming with a new insight, new approach. And that's what people are doing here. I'm very amazed in every conference where people apply.
Right.
Yeah, you wouldn't even think.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Lipedema.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's almost like every single person goes out and finds their connection to the connective tissue.
But this can continue for many more years.
I think so.
So you use the fascial as a ubiquitous networking organ, and you can bet that it has not been taken serious in its functional importance.
Yeah.
And then you ask that, so you look at the fascial aspect in topic number 12. And you have a high chance that you see them influence some connections that will be a contribution.
So much of this is therapeutic, like fixing the damage. And I always wanted to probe and be like, how can we not do the damage in the first place?
But that would be nice.
Right? I think that there are ways that if people live consciously and do these movements, I really feel like it's in, those loading. It's, somebody said to me recently about stress is that it's not the stress that kills us. It's how we react to it.
But that would make sense.
And I think the same thing for the fascia. I think about the same thing with my psychology. It's like really teaching and helping the human rewrite their story, or how they metabolize their stresses, how they are in relationship to those stresses that is preventative, right?
So that was what intrigued me. The Andreas Banzer study that I briefly explained on the first day. So he measured on himself for full months how mobile or adhesive his lumbar fascia was, and he found a very nice, timely relationship. When there was acute stress, 48 hours later, his fascia was much more stuck. So it didn't move as much in the same movement.
Isn't that interesting?
And that fits to many things. But then he found out 5 days after the adhesion, very often it got better than before the whole thing. And he called that supercompensation. And I now watch myself. If I get into stress where I really realize this was too much, I cannot move as much, my sleep is not as good. So let's see how long I take to recover. But will I have a possible supercompensation when I come back that then my system says, woohoo!
Yeah. That's a sign of growth. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's the actual lesson of all growth,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The hardship we go through, we should come out stronger.
Yeah,
The
but not
loss that we
always.
have,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. So you have these friends with their tight teeth who say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, etc. But you don't see the hoo-hoo there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they also don't actually let go of it,
Yeah.
right? They actually don't let it fully leave their system.
Yeah.
They don't they carry the burden with them.
Yeah.
If you let the heartache be the heartache,
Yeah.
rather than carrying it, then you can get the elation.
Yeah.
Then there is the breath
Yeah.
on the other side.
Yeah.
There is the farther stretch,
Yeah.
so that's really interesting that it's actually happening on the physiological level.
But I think his trick, and I'm trying to simulate, is he's a mad scientist. It's amazing how much he reads and publishes. But he still goes rock climbing on a real athletic level 2 or 3 times per week.
Really?
No matter if he has banging doors in his marriage or whatever.
Really?
He goes out and is physically challenged in a way where you have no possibility to pity yourself about your scientific or marriage career.
That's really interesting. Yeah, like almost get it out of your body. It's like,
holy cow, I don't want to fall down here.
That's focus on something different. Well, this was my question. I think, but by like your lecture at the conference is something that I talk about, but it feels like fascia sits as the metabolic material for both our chemical loads and our mechanical loads. And that it responds the same. Like I've noticed huge hormonal inflections in my body, and my fascia gets rigid even though I didn't do anything. And I feel the same rigidity if I go out and do something strenuous with my tissue mechanically. And so that's where I see this like kind of like the bridge between our mental health and our physical health, where fascia really is the thing that's modulating the release of that. And I feel like motion is the most potent because it's the motion that gets you away from the lion, but also gets rid of the adrenaline that was toxic to your tissues.
And also so if your biochemistry is stuck, and you don't have sufficient movement, even if it's only in parts of your body. It will become painful and poisonous.
Right? And that's kind of what our emotions do if we don't actually put them into motion, emotion. So that's is that what your research is showing, is saying that
I'm tending more and more. So if I have been doing that as a author, but I would do it even more, that I see the main task. Usually you do a series with 10 sessions or 12 or 8, but a limited series, and then you send them and see. So let's see how stable that is, and you can come back in a year or something like that. And but I would judge it if I have if I have motivated them to have a more active movement lifestyle. Then you have done your work. But if they are doing the same couch potato life, it doesn't need to be sport, but it needs to be physical movement in a variety of contexts. And then they can come back and you fix their fascia every year.
That's right.
So I think this is the ultimate goal, that you motivate them, not only because they need to do it, but they have a pleasure to do it.
That's right. Because movement should be a release. And this is what I always get with people in the stuff that I do. They say, I feel like I've had really deep tissue massage, even though I'm exercising. And I'm like, because you're actually finishing, offloading that thing. Like movement shouldn't be exercise. It's elative.
But for human beings who have a full fridge,
and are not in touch with their body.
And you don't need to go on the fields in order to feed yourself or your family. Then exercise is a good way to make up for that missing.
I think I might say something that I want you to know if there's any research on this. I usually tell people that the muscular system is directed by the adrenals, directed more by those hormones, and the fascia is directed a little bit more from the endorphins, which is why people get this extreme feeling of like endocrine relief and release and like euphoria. I have people constantly tell me it's euphoric, and I can't explain it, but do you have any research or know of anything that's saying like what is the dominant, maybe there's more receptors for that are aligned to a fascia from the endorphin base versus the adrenal
They could
base?
be.
Or
The leading people is Caterina Fede and Carla Speckel, and they haven't done much on the opioid so
oh,
far.
interesting.
Larissa Sinharim did something.
Say her name again. Sorry.
Larissa Sinharim, who
Huh.
was in the room half an hour ago.
Okay.
She did something on the opioid receptors and showed that they are involved in myofascial pain and
Okay.
fascia.
They are.
But she also showed endocannabinoid receptors,
Oh,
and they seem
interesting.
to be equally
Important
yeah.
into that.
And Carla showed that if you stimulate the endocannabinoid receptors, that doesn't mean smoking marijuana. There are many more natural ways to do that.
Yeah.
Then we know that many myofascial pain gets better, but she showed then the fibroblast 15 minutes later produce bags with hyaluronan in it. So they make the ground substance more juicy.
Really?
Yeah. So
it's not just a receptor thing or a sensory thing. It's an actual.
The fibroblasts have lots of endocannabinoid receptors.
Interesting.
And how juicy the tissue is, whether it gets dry or not, is regulated by many factors, including aging and hormones, etc. But also by whether the endocannabinoid receptors are stimulated. Isn't that interesting?
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
I'd like to know more about that.
Yeah.
And she would be able to explain that to me.
Yeah. So it wouldn't be far off to also look in more details at the opioid receptors and how specifically. So what happens when you stimulate them?
That's right.
They have an effect on pain sensitivity.
And that's what I'm wondering.
But on the morphology, I haven't seen anything.
You haven't seen anything.
Yeah.
That's interesting because I think that I would make sense to me just theoretically that since fascia is so expressive in pain, it would also have the receptors for the antidote, you know, that we're not like just stranded between.
And that would be usually hormone has more than one function, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
So with endocannabinoids, nobody thought about hyaluronan.
No.
So I would not be surprised.
Interesting. I'll have to keep you. Yeah, you're gonna have to keep me updated on that. Yeah. That's really an interesting place of study. So because I find. Yeah, the feeling that people describe after fascia is interesting to me.
Yeah,
and it came back. The reason I was saying this is that you said, if you have a full fridge, what motivates people to move? And if you're moving from the adrenal system, it's exhausting and it feels like toxic.
Yeah.
But what I'm finding in the movement that we do in GST is that it's the opposite. You actually crave it.
Yeah.
I have people craving this movement.
Yeah.
Like it's a drug. Not like a drug. But do you know what I mean? Like there's this because it's soothing.
Yeah.
Because it's actually indulgent. The body goes, and people,
So I have a beautiful example.
Yeah.
Yesterday when I got up, I went to the fitness center at 6 a.m. and did some movement.
I want to just make sure this is on. Keep going.
Okay.
Yep, you went to the gym. Yep, we're good.
And then I had the same plan for myself because running out in the hot thing doesn't work, but I can do some there. And then I felt like, I've taken care of myself, you know, because being inside an hotel for 4 or 5 days,
it's terrible.
It's a killer.
Terrible.
And I would come home and I would have pain and I could explain it. I told you, I've been preaching it. I never go to these conferences again. So that is a possible story, you know.
I see.
And you feel very righteous, but not very happy about that story. So I felt about writing another story. I find my 5 minutes or 10 minutes in the morning.
Yes.
So this morning I got a WhatsApp from the board. Robert, you should come at an early meeting. I said, I will be there. I'm Robert, I'm responsible. You know, I will be there on time. You don't
have to worry about it.
But then I didn't have my exercise. So I thought, yes, I'm the German brave.
But I'm missing what I need.
Yeah. I hope things go well. But of course, I cannot be as enthusiastic again or whatever it is. But then these German women got up with some dancing. I felt like, I have my record.
I got my joy on. It's so good. It's so good. I was actually going to ask you, you've given me so much time.
Yeah.
I just wanted to see if I could show you a little of the stretching because you like moving. You love the body.
So 10 minutes? Sure.
Yeah. Should we try that?
Yeah.
Okay.